Hey everybody, welcome back to the Boston Micro Soldering stream. We have here an original PS4. This is a CUH-1001A for T in Somerville. He contacted us yesterday to let us know that he has an overheating issue. So essentially, PS4 will turn on, you can go through the menus, connect to the network, install games. But as soon as you start to play a game, it does crash with the classic red light, series of beeps, and when you turn it back on, it basically behaves as though it was unplugged unexpectedly. It does the hard drive check and everything. So I tested this quite a bit before starting the video, just because I wanted to be able to trigger it and show you how obvious the issue is. Started with Madden. Couldn't do it. Fan got up to full speed when we started Madden, but it didn't trigger the overheating. So I installed Horizon Zero Dawn, something a little bit more graphically intense, a newer game, and it is pretty obvious. So right now we've basically just gone through the 10-minute cutscene at the beginning of Horizon Zero Dawn. That in itself will spin this up to medium or high fan speed. It's kind of where we are right now. But as soon as the PS4 really has to do some hard work, not just play a video, but actually run a full game engine, that is going to trigger this to turn off. So now that we're on our start screen for Horizon, we can start a new game. Immediately we're up to maximum fan speed. This thing sounds like it's going to take off. And here we go. We have red light shutdown. If we turn this guy back on, it's going to behave as though it was unplugged from power. Because that's what it's doing. It's basically cutting off power to the system to keep itself from burning. One other thing I want to show with this machine is the condition of the disk drive. So overheating, if it's not water damage, it's caused by dust. Dust and old thermal paste. Dirty machines that are overheating usually have dirty disk drive rollers. So as soon as this lets me, we're going to eject the disk. Let me show this from the top orientation. And already it's doing checking system status because of that unexpected shutdown event. So when I bring this disk in, it's very, very slow to grab it. And that's just because the rubber on the rollers is dirty. So when we open this up to clean the system out, the fan, the heatsink, we're also going to just open up the disk drive to see if we can clean that dirt off the rollers, and that should make the disk drive far more reliable for insert and eject. Okay, so our machine's coming back on. We've got the PS logo. It's going to turn on normally in a second. Be back exactly where we were. PS4 was not turned off properly before unplugging AC power cord, blah, blah, blah. And, we're back into the menu. Everything usable, fan is on low. So we have to trigger this with loading a big game engine. It's not going to turn off just the second you power this device on. I'm just going to turn this off properly. Get the HDMI unplugged. We're just going to give it a second until our white light out. And our white light's off. So this is totally off. We can pull power. The first thing I noticed with this guy is that there really isn't any visible dust from the outside. So when we get into the hard drive bay, it is pretty clean. There's not really anything to notice on top, but I'm sure once we get inside, the heatsink is going to be at least 50% blocked. Now this has been opened up before. We are missing our seals. So somebody probably tried to clean this, but they didn't go far enough into the device. Either that, or this was opened up for some other reason. Maybe a port repair, or cleaning the disk drive, for instance. And whoever opened it just was too ignorant or lazy to replace the thermal paste. And so basically there could be little or no paste on the actual CPU. Yeah, really not so dusty yet. Let's see when we get the power supply out of here. And our fan is actually completely clean. So there is nothing to get out of there. This may be a short video. So we're looking at kind of a mystery, not the classic overheating event. It's looking more and more like this might be a case of water damage. Yep, our power supply also looks pretty clean. We do have some rust spots just directly under the power supply. See if we can get those in focus. Just a little bit of rust spotting. See what it looks like on the other side of the mid plate once we get the board out of there. And yeah, like so, these cables have been disturbed before. They're definitely not routed exactly the way they're supposed to be. Still not very much dust in here. Here's something interesting. It looks to me like our what do we want to call this? Our heatsink clamp. Yeah, this has actually been mounted upside down. So if you see the little divot here, the little nipple on the top, this has a slight bend to it. So if someone has disassembled this guy, that little bend is there to provide pressure. So when I push down on both sides of this with the screws, I'm essentially pressing on the center of this, or well, on the plate centered over the CPU. So that guy was backwards. I'm a little surprised that the machine is booting, to be honest. A lot of times when there's no pressure on the CPU, it's just gonna blue light as soon as it starts to boot. It's gonna blue light of death. So it's a little bit interesting. Let's take a look at what else is going on, if anything else is installed upside down. I really wonder who opened this up and why, because presumably if this was a professional, they would have had some colleague that caught their mistake. And if it was a do-yourselfer, I would have expected that they would bring it to perhaps a repair shop that could have caught the issue. But from what I understand about the history of this device, it was sold to the current owner used. The seller did not disclose the overheating issue. So our current owner could not have been the person who took it apart. Okay, so our silicone pads are here. One of them just broke off. So pads are there. Definitely don't see any signs of water damage on the bottom side of the board. You know, just flux from the factory. And moment of truth. What do we got? Yeah. So this thermal paste is really dry and flaky. For the life of me, I really don't know why this device was disassembled in the first place. It's like somebody took it apart because they were curious, put it back together, and caused the problem. But the thermal paste is very dry. Whoever was in here last time definitely did not open it to replace the thermal paste. So let's clean that off and see if this is as simple as putting it back together properly. Really thought that we could do a nice device cleaning video today. We can still clean up the customer's disk drive. I don't want to give it back to him with those rollers failing, because one day his disks are just going to get stuck and not come out. But to be honest, I'll be a little bit disappointed if this was just a put it back together right video. You can't learn too much from that other than learning to avoid Technician X's mistakes. Yeah, this board's real clean. I really don't see any sign of rework. HDMI definitely has not been replaced. It is that first generation HDMI port, the one that's not very reliable. I mean, it's possible that this guy was opened in order to be cleaned, but I don't see them this clean when a person cleans it. You know, there will be fingerprints, there'll be streaks, and this device looks like it was literally used for 6 months. Though it is the first generation, so we expect this would have been manufactured, you know, over 5 years ago. Let's take a look at our heatsink while we're here. Oh, and we've got a bent up grounding plate too. I wonder if that corresponds to something that could have been damaged on the board. So this is our orientation for the board. Our plate therefore would sit under this little square indent. And we do have a scratch on the board. Thank God it's nowhere near the RAM. I mean, it's literally in that gap where there's not a RAM chip. So we have RAM, we have big empty space, and we have RAM. There's a deep scratch on the ground plane. Let's take a closer look under the microscope and see how deep that goes. But conceivably, something could be shorting out if there are lines going through the board here. Yeah, that goes real deep. This has got to be ground. But this is concerning because it's possible that there are traces on the under the ground plane that go to one of these RAM chips, which could be cut or could be shorted to ground. So we're going to hope that that's not the cause of this. Otherwise, the last person to open this up really killed it. I don't think I'm going to be doing scraping down to do trace repair on this. Certainly not tonight. bend that pin back. It's bent. It's like rolled over. Pin's like been turned into a corkscrew. Okay. Bend you down. Anything else bent backwards? Yeah, there is. Jesus. Okay, back to the same orientation. We have our board here, and there's a bent pin on this side. So that is going to go, and the board's scratched. Jesus. This looks very superficial, thankfully. Let's see if we can find it. There's this big coil, and then there's just this kind of superficial scratch. That's nothing. It doesn't even cut through the conformal coating. All right, are we up for finding a third problem? Let's bend this guy back down. Third stupidness, yep. There's a third stupidness. That scares me. That might be real close to RAM as well. Why people? So I think somebody took a rag and they were like scrubbing this with the rag, and the rag just grabbed all of these pins and just bent them back. Okay, so original orientation. That pin is going to be here. It's near this. It's basically near the Southbridge chip. If I'm getting, oh well, no, it's another SCIE chip. I forget what this is, but the most important thing is that there is not a scratch there on the board. The dumb things people do. There's a couple other pins that are a little bent, but just a little bit. Yeah, the only scratch that concerns me is the one that's kind of halfway between a RAM chip and the ground plane. Alright, under our heatsink, or, well, our heatsink itself. Yeah, that's as clean as can be. Nothing bent on this side. There are just those couple little rust spots. Fan is super clean. Alright, let's clean the customer's disk drive rollers. And we'll test this out with the clamp installed properly. Get some good and proper paste on this CPU. Perfect little P. That will spread itself out once the clamp is placed properly and tightened properly. And that will last another 8 years. So advertised. Do 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 do. Alright, so very important, our bend with the little nipple is going to be facing the CPU. So this is going to rock before we clamp it down. Because now we know exactly what it means when you do it backwards. Okay. Now we are going to tighten this about 1 turn per side. We do want to put the clamp down evenly. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on one corner of the APU and no pressure on the other corner. So kind of do a half turn, half turn, half turn, half turn. You could do half turn switch, half turn switch. It's a little bit more appropriate, technically. Go as even as possible. And we're in. Both sides about the same rate. We can pop our top assembly back on, top case. Get in the customer's Hitachi drive, which looked very clean. Not even going to blow any air through that because it's very clean already. And let's work on our disk drive. So first things first is to get our cable out of the way. Data cable and power cable. This is not routed. We can slip that back through properly in a moment. And then we've got our 4 Torx screws, 1 in each corner, and 1 little Phillips head. This guy is going to have the antenna come with it. And just don't forget our tiny little Phillips head right in the middle of the CD slot. Come on. Okay. Yeah, still some dust in there. And I had already forgotten to take our disc out, so I'm not going to try to yank out the disc or anything. I'm just going to go to our side here, the manual release screw, and I'm going to push that disc out the right way. Many turns. So I don't want to damage any of these gears. And it's out. Get a decently clean Swiffer. Okay, we only have 3 corner screws and a notch. lift up, pull our notch out, like so. This is not terribly dirty and dusty. There's not a lot to blow out of here, but we know that our rollers are very dirty. So I'm going to grab one, my finger on, pop it up towards the center. I'm going to take our linkage arm, white hard plastic, and our rubber roller out. Same thing for the next roller. I can get my finger under it. If you've got big fat fingers like me, at this step you can also slide a small round object like a Phillips head in, pop it up very carefully, and slide it away from the white gear. So this is very simple. As we've gone over in other videos, these rollers will never need to be replaced from age. I've not seen an instance where they've ever been scratched up enough from use, or dirty enough that they need to be replaced. The oil that's on them is going to dissolve with an alcohol pad. If they're really filthy, you can use one alcohol pad for each roller. 2 total, but that is all you're ever going to need. It is user damage and technician damage that requires these to be replaced. So if somebody's been sticking, a knife into this disk drive, trying to get things out, and they've cut up this rubber, well, that's a different situation. But don't ever worry about needing to order a new one of these when the drive isn't, when the rollers aren't catching the disk, because an alcohol pad will always solve it. So I'm going to slide our first roller back onto the gear and snap it down into the middle. I need to grab our second roller, linkage arm, kind of put it in already. Slide the linkage arm in, and I'm going to slot this in on the side before I push down on the center. And now they're both solidly in there. Alright. Now, this is just to show you how dirty this machine used to be. No one was in this particular corner to clean off this felt. So that's probably what this machine looked like before the first technician got to it. So let's brush that off. Right. Looks much better. We are going to slot in our bottom right corner. Someone has been here before. So if we take a look at that slot, it is already bent. I don't know why someone would have opened this up to clean it and not cleaned the felt, but we do need to bend that back just a little bit, flatten it, and that should do. Yeah, the whole plastic was really crushed by someone. See if I can show you that. Just kind of crushed down. It really needs to be bent up slightly. That might catch normally now. Wow. All right. Okay. If at first you don't succeed with pliers, try bigger pliers. And that's now notching the way it's supposed to. So we slot down and we slide in. Just like so. I've lost track of the dumb mistakes. Maybe we can make a count at the end of this project. Just goes to show you, if you haven't done it before, please seek guides, seek advice, or seek professional help if you screw up. Don't sell it to somebody else as a perfectly working PS4. That's bad karma. Shedding my gloves. Which we don't really need at this point. That didn't catch very well. Probably just cracked plastic in that, under that hole. Get our only Wi-Fi antenna back. Remember, this is the first gen, so it doesn't have dual band Wi-Fi, and it doesn't have like a separate antenna for Wi-Fi versus Bluetooth. On the Slims and the Pros, it's like 3 antennas. I think they give it, 2 separate 2.4 gigahertz antennas on the new ones. And before we deal with our Wi-Fi antenna, let's get the Blu-ray power situated, because this plug wasn't routed at all and I don't want the power supply to pinch it. Slide it into the Blu-ray board. It's kind of under the board, so you need to push it with tweezers or pliers carefully, one side at a time. Okay, that feels pretty tight. And I'm going to slide the parts of this that are protected by electrical tape into the little slots in the midframe. Then before I snap in the power supply to the board, I need to run the Wi-Fi antenna under it. Okay, so we've got Blu-ray power from the board, Wi-Fi routed around its own twists and turns. And finally, Blu-ray data. All right, let's get this power supply plugged in and try her out. And what we're really going to hope for is that that deep scratch in the board is not trace damage. If our overheating event still occurs, then it is a short to RAM. That should be a fun video, not? Okay, lest we not forget the little screw that I guess keeps the gap open for the disc tray, so that gap doesn't close. Let's slide our power supply cable a little deeper into the machine. Don't want that pinched. That's better. I didn't even realize going through this machine that it was missing one screw. So let's replace it, shall we? Must have been on the board and I didn't even notice. Okay, we've got our slightly bent brackets here. That's okay. Not like we're going to scratch the board with them or anything. All right, we got our moment of truth. We are blue lighting for boot. PS logo on the screen. And white light now in an operating system. We are going to load up Horizon again with disk. And I'm also going to inject that just to show you how well it goes in and out now. So we're just going to let it snag it and take it. Smooth. Eject. Smooth. And really we've got our fan on minimum speed. I can barely even hear it over my desk fan. Just gonna turn that off. Only background we have at this point is just the internal fan on minimum speed. And let's let's start a new game on normal difficulty. I have no idea how to play this. Story difficulty, setting eases combat, allowing you to focus on exploration and narrative. So already we are in the game engine. This is further than we got before. We have our system on just about minimum fan, maybe going from minimum slowly towards medium. Ooh, this game must be a pain to play on a mechanical hard drive. Definitely seems like the type of thing you'd want an SSD for. We are 90% through the loading bar at the bottom of the screen. But the good news is we've definitely solved our overheating issue. We've got normal sound, normal temperature. And this is either a cutscene or in-game, who knows. Well, we're going to skip it, control the character. Oh yeah. And here we are, in-game engine. Looks very pretty. Alright, so we're going to do a little further testing on this. We're going to start and finish a Blu-ray, something to get this, working and hot for a longer period of time. But it looks like this is solved. I thought we'd get to do a cleaning video today. It turns out this was just a list of what not to do, what, idiotic mistakes not to do while cleaning. Because clearly the person who opened this to clean this caused a problem it didn't already have. And the owner T and us, we're just lucky that there weren't any very deep scratches, any real damage to the board. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you learned what not to do when cleaning a PlayStation 4.